Political analyst Dumsani Tembe says the extreme factionalism playing itself out in the ANC is due to its failure to keep itself separate from the state. Tembe's comments come after President Cyril Ramaphosa testified at the Zondo Commission this week. He gave testimony in his capacity as president of the governing African National Congress at the State Capture Commission. Now, questions have been raised on how Ramaphosa's answers will differ when he returns to the commission in May, this time as the country's president. Now, Tembe says South Africans should not expect anything different from his previous testimony. Let's have a listen.
Well, my chief, that's a very fictitious line, or let me put it nicely, it's a bad line. The idea that Ramaphosa appears as an ANC president, not as a state president, that will come back as a representative, there's a very, very thin line. In the first place, he becomes a state president on the basis of an ANC processes and tickets and procedures. And you could tell even from the answers that he was giving that at some point he was speaking as a state president and not necessarily as a leader of the role. So that's a very, very fictitious thin line, and I can bet that the type of answers that he will give when he comes back as a state president, they won't necessarily differ from what he has said, because that's one of the fallacies of the South African politics, that you can distinguish the two.
Meanwhile, Tembe says Secretary General Ace Magashule's defiance is a sign that the ANC has failed to govern itself.
I don't think we should personalize it around the Cyril Ramaphosa. I'm sure it makes, media interest to personalize it around Ramaphosa. But this is it's a collective leadership issue of the ANC.
Right.
And in most cases, you see, for me, Cyril Ramaphosa, the pressure on Cyril Ramaphosa is that he inherited the burden of the weaknesses of leadership of the organization over time. So it's very easy to use Ramaphosa, Zuma to be the scapegoat of what is essentially a lack of organizational discipline over time. So in fact, if the ANC was well disciplined internally, ANC would have stepped aside by now.
Well, the deadline for Secretary General Ace Magashule to step aside has gone, with no indication of whether he will or will not step aside. This resolution has divided the Free State province. This is Magashule's stronghold. His supporters in that province say they are prepared to go to court to challenge the step-aside resolution. Meanwhile, the Mangaung region in the Free State, this is the second biggest province. It has thrown its weight behind the NEC decision. I'm joined now in studio by our senior reporter, that's Zianda Ngobo. We also joined via the virtual platform by the ANC veteran in the Free State province, that's Ike More. We're also joined by Sanko chairperson in the Free State, Gift Pudi. We're also going to be joined by political analyst, Professor Andre Duvenache. He is with the Northwest University. But first, let's begin here in studio. Zianda, you were in the Free State province in the last week, and we know that that province has had the ANC structure there basically nullifying its existence and the decision coming through the Supreme Court of Appeal. Just give us the lay of the land. What's the situation there right now?
You're quite right, Goli. So it starts off with last month, the Supreme Court of Appeal nullifying that 2018 Provincial Elective Conference, which in effect then dissolves the PEC in the province. And so there is no PEC in the Free State province, which makes the step-aside issue quite tricky then, because there is no provincial executive to oversee that process. However, after then, the Supreme Court of Appeal then handed down that judgment, the national office intervened. We know that Kgalema Motlanthe is the one dealing with mediating the two warring factions within the Free State. And in fact, it was on the 19th of April that a declaration of intent was signed by Mxolisi Dukwana and one William Bulwane, where they in essence said that there would be no appeal of the Supreme Court of Appeal judgments, and that all the issues pertaining to the Free State would be dealt with internally under the leadership of Kgalema Motlanthe. However, just 24 hours, if not 48 hours later, then we saw papers being deposed at the Constitutional Court using the ANC's name, but the individuals who were applying using the ANC's name were the embattled Secretary General, Ace Magashule, and the disbanded Free State Chair, Sam Nwashinini. A day later after that, then, you saw Paseka Nompondo, the disbanded Provincial Secretary, deposing a letter on behalf of Moroka attorneys saying that they had no mandate to actually, depose that appeal, that the ANC would be dealing with their matters internally, and that affidavit must now be withdrawn. And so what this tells us, Oli, about the lay of the land in the Free State is that I'm told that even Ace Magashule's former strong allies are beginning to now change their tune. They're all working towards this process that is being led by Kgalema Motlanthe to unite these warring factions and hopefully put some kind of interim structure in place to actually lead the province. But as it stands, it's a province that is leaderless, and in actual fact, if there were to be appeal, that would have to come from the NWC or the NEC itself.
Yeah. Mr. More, let's come to you in Bloemfontein. You are a veteran of the African National Congress. Give us your sense of how the Free State province is at the moment. How would you describe the leadership of that province at the moment? We know that it's leaderless, but this is your opportunity to tell us how you see things proceeding from here on.
Okay. Yeah, indeed, by all means, the ANC in the province is leaderless. It doesn't have any leadership. And as one has been saying, it is important that all members of the ANC, regardless of the size that they found themselves in the past, should come together, and resolve to unite the ANC. The ANC is very sick in the province. The branches are existing in a very artificial form. There is at the moment, something unfolding in which the regional task teams are taking branches to BBGMs, which is an anomaly because according to point 19, point 9, point 12 of the ANC Constitution, only a provincial structure can take, branches and regions to conference. So yes, one could say that the ANC at the moment in the province is leaderless, and it is important, that that structure which is supposed to be put in place by Colonel Kgalema should be put in place, fairly swiftly, so that it can close the vacuum, and begin a process, not a punitive one, but that of uniting all members of the ANC in the province to rebuild the ANC.
Gift, yes. Let's come to you. You are leading the SANCO, the National Civics Organization in the Free State. You're also part of the ANC-led alliance. In your view, what has brought the Free State province to the sorry state it finds itself today? Mr. Pudi, can you hear us? All right, it would appear that Gift Pudi. Gift, can you hear us? I see you are on the screen. Is the connection to you clear enough? Can you hear me? All right, it looks like Gift Pudi is unable to hear us at the moment. We'll try and reconnect with him. Ziyanda, let's come back to you. Is there any indication from the ANC, at least the national office, that there is going to be some kind of an interim structure put together, or that will be announced to lead the Free State province, at least prepare it to go to conference so that a proper leadership is elected?
So there hasn't been an announcement that's been given by the NEC or the NWC because then Kgalema Motlanthe needs to go back to the NEC and present a report of what he's found in the Free State. This memorandum of intent that's been signed, that was breached by some clearly, but I'm told that actually it was Ace Magashule and Sam Mashinini who happened to not be a part of this meeting where this memorandum of declaration of intent, I should say, was signed, where they've declared that both factions will not appeal the Supreme Court of Appeal judgment. So we understand that Motlanthe needs to go back to the NEC, present his report at the next NEC meeting, and thereafter a decision will be taken on what is to happen to the ANC in the Free State. Now, when I was there last week, when the Mangaung region was having a briefing, and what Ntate More is speaking about is quite true, that now, because there's no provincial structure, there are regions having briefings left, right and center. The Thabo Mofutanyane region is saying that in no uncertain terms must Ace Magashule step aside. Then you had the Mangaung region coming out then on Tuesday or Wednesday, I think it was, saying that in fact that region has the chairperson of the regional task team in that region has no right to speak on behalf of all the regions, because as the Mangaung region, the second biggest region, they support and they're throwing their weight behind the NEC's decision for these guidelines and the implementation of these guidelines. And so it would be interesting then to see then how Motlanthe will present the state of the Free State. But what I can tell you is that the disbanding of that structure has also then waned some of the power of Magashule in the province, it would seem, just by virtue of the fact that there's no one core structure, and that it's everyone's game right now up until then the national office makes a pronouncement on the way forward for that province.
All right, so it would seem it's a free-for-all, as you describe it, Ziyanda. Mr. More, I want to come back to you. The reported actions of the Secretary General, Ace Magashule, siding with the now disbanded chair of that province to try and appeal this Supreme Court decision. What does that tell you about Ace Magashule's interest in the Free State province, and how do you view his actions?
Well, I wouldn't like to read much, from the public actions, because one still has, hope and confidence that Comrade Ace, as a long-standing member of the ANC, is still loyal to the ANC and its constitution, and especially after having met, the stalwarts and veterans of the ANC, amongst them, in the name of Comrade Thabo Mbeki and Comrade Kgalema Motlanthe. I'm sure that he will do the right thing. I'm sure that his conscience would tell him, to do the right thing and to step aside. As the conference that elected him, the SG, is the very same conference that took, that adopted that resolution. So I'm saying that I wouldn't like to read much with what has been happening publicly. But I'm sure that these exchanges, interactions that he has been having with members of the ANC generally, his family, as he said, would like to discuss with his family and, friends. I'm sure that, after all has been said and done, as a long-standing member of the ANC, he will do the right thing and step aside for the sake of the ANC, but not only for the sake of the ANC, but for the sake of this country, to get on his important, objective of, transforming this country. Thank you.
All right. Let's pause there for a second as well, that we are in the middle of a conversation about the state of the African National Congress in the Free State province. And we are joined by one of its veterans in that province, Ike More. We're also hoping to be joined by the SANCO chairperson who should have been part of this discussion from the onset, but technical issues playing havoc at the moment. Gift Pudi is also among the people that we are hoping to have this discussion with. And then let's add to the conversation Professor Andre Duvenage. He is with the Northwest University, is going to be weighing in terms of analysis. And in studio we're joined by our senior politics reporter, Zianda Ngobo. Mr. Pudi, I'm hoping you can hear me this time around. Can you hear me first before I pose my question? Okay, I'm told that Pudi is not quite with us just yet. Let's try and bring into the conversation Professor Andre Duvenage. Prof, good afternoon to you. To what would you attribute the problems that the Free State finds itself in today?
Well, I think if we analyze the situation of the Free State, it came since 1994. And for about 4 or 5 terms, Mr. Magashule, as chairperson of the ANC, were excluded to become premier, specifically as a result of the initiative of President Mbeki. And only after Zuma took over, he got the inside line and he became premier and later a very important member of the so-called Premiers League. Now, since that time, even before Magashule took control, the province was a province in decay. But since that period, it was a form of state capture. It was a huge project of state capture to the benefit of the Magashule faction. And there's a lot of evidence showing that. Already in the times when I was at the University of the Free State, we had knowledge of the high levels of corruption. But what was important was the inability of the ANC to act in a proper way. And I would like to put it to the panel, I'm even today not sure if the ANC has the courage to really take on the Magashules of the world. I give credit to the fact that they took a number of decisions. But at this point in time, Mr. Magashule hasn't stepped aside. He's still keeping his position, and knowing him very well, I know he is going to have a fight-back campaign of the Stalingrad strategy. But at the same time, we can argue that the sand is running through the hourglass. It's late in the night for him, and it's a difficult position. But does the ANC have the courage to act in a proper way? That is the big question.
All right. Thank you, Prof, for those inputs. I'm going to ask you to stay exactly where you are. Zianda, the Prof raises a very important issue, and that is that step aside. The deadline, actually, if our calculations are right in the media space, that came to an end this past weekend, meaning that we should have had an announcement by now as to the status of the Secretary General of the ANC.
Absolutely, and it's not just the Secretary General. I think some would say, we focus too much on the Secretary General, but, there are several others, even in the Free State, such as Olim Lamleli, the former Mangaung mayor, who will be affected by the step-aside guidelines. And the fact that there is no provincial structure in place there, it makes it very interesting to see then how the guideline will be implemented. Has the list already been submitted to the SGO's office, knowing very well that Mlamleli and Magashule Magashule are facing charges in the Bloemfontein court for that doomed asbestos project worth 255 million rand. And this is exactly the anomaly then that the ANC faces, that it's the Secretary General's office that is meant to be dealing with all the lists coming in from the various provinces, as per that instruction by the guidelines, to say then that these are the people who are currently facing charges in a court of law. And I think it's important to emphasize, because there are some in Magashule's corner who believe then that the Secretary General is being targeted, and yet there are others who have been mentioned in the State Capture Commission of Inquiry. The guidelines are quite specific. It's for those who are facing charges in a court of law. There was also at some stage, when I was speaking to provincial secretaries, a bit of difficulty in terms of actually tracking down who are all these people who may not necessarily be high profile or senior leaders within the province who are facing charges within a court of law, because it's not as if once someone faces charges within a court of law that they go to the ANC office and declare themselves. And so some were actually suggesting maybe working with law enforcement authorities to actually get the names of people who are facing charges within a court of law.
I'm told that we finally have been able to establish the line to Gift Pudi, the chairperson of Sanco in the Free State province. Mr. Pudi, thanks for your time. Let me give you the opportunity first to describe the state of affairs in the Free State province as you see it.
No, thank you very much, Toli, and then thank you very much to your viewers. Like you indicated, as Sanco in the province of Free State, we went through the province, talked to our people, talked to our structures about the step aside, and our people were in agreement with our people that this step aside is concocted and designed to deal with certain individuals within the ANC.
Okay, so that's in relation to the step-aside rule. We're going to come back in a moment, but I'd like to get your thoughts on why you think the leadership crisis that the Free State finds itself in today, how that has come about. Why does the Free State find itself in a sorry state that it is in today? It's without a leadership.
It's unfortunate, Toli, that you know that in the province of Free State, there are factional battles, and then immediately after the result of Nasrec, some people did not accept the result of Nasrec, and then in terms of what we know, immediately after the conference, we must rally behind the elected leaders, but some people felt aggrieved. Since from Nasrec, we're not stable, and then in the province, in the country, and then next day we go into the national conference of the ANC, so people are positioning themselves. That is why we are having instability within the province.
So the instability, who is responsible for that?
No, it's obvious. The internal battles in the ANC. The ANC is deeply divided. The ANC is bleeding. And then the ANC as a leader of society, when it's divided, it's going to divide also the society. So internal battles of the ANC are the cause of problem in the province.
Mr. More, let me come to you. On the step-aside rule, do you foresee a situation where the Free State province will be unable to submit that list of leaders who should actually step aside? Because we know that the party at national level has requested lists of members who should be affected by the step-aside rule.
Well, I have never been a member of the PEC. I'm not even aware if I'm going to be the member of the PTT or not. So I really wouldn't know whether the list has been submitted or not. But what one can clearly, establish is that there is a authority vacuum in the Free State. No one knows exactly what is happening. And as one has pointed out earlier, it seems that the regional task teams, which are not elected structures, are busy taking, decisions on their own, taking the branches to the BBGMs, which is outside, the purview of their authority, as according to Section 19.9.12 of the Constitution of the ANC. So I don't know. I'm not sure if the Free State has been able, to provide that list.
At governance level, Mr. More, how would you describe the state of the Free State province?
It's very bad, one must say, When the political center cannot hold and give direction or gives wrong direction, it is bound, to impact very negatively, at governance level. For instance, a few weeks ago, the councillors at Setsoto voted out, a mayor of the Setsoto local council. And about sometimes next week, the regional task team there wrote the councillors a letter indicating to them that they should give reasons within 48 hours. Why shouldn't they be suspended? So everybody does, as they please. There is no clear political direction on what is happening in government. It's a very sorry state. It is also an indication of a greater and deeper problem in the Free State. That there is definitely something wrong, with the ills in the Free State. Something that needs to be, properly looked into, through a proper diagnostic, inquiry. And only thereafter, can people start talking about, branches, going to BBGMs, talking about, electing councils. The work that the committee to be established by Comrade Khalima Motlanthe is supposed to do has got, an immense responsibility on his shoulders. That's what I can say, that even in governance, things are not that rosy. 90% of municipalities, if I'm not wrong, local government structures in the province, they've collapsed, service delivery. It's a huge problem that that structure would have to be seized with to ensure that it restores, a proper ANC values in governance and ensure that the ANC concentrates on rebuilding itself and, guaranteeing that it carries out, the objective, the promise which it made to the people of South Africa during the struggle and when it took over power through, the elections.
Professor Duvenacher, let's bring you in. If the ANC in the Free State is unable to pull itself together and is unable to elect a proper leadership, you've just listened to Mr. More recounting the governance problems there. He says 90% of municipalities in the Free State have collapsed. We know that the impact of corruption in that Free State province is in part why the former premier, who is now the Secretary General of the ANC, finds himself in court alongside a person who has been the mayor of the only metro in Mangaung, that's Oli Mlamleni. That Mangaung metro itself has been downgraded twice by the ratings agencies. Then we have had the Fredder Dairy Farm scandal, which involved the Guptas. Just the list is endless. If the ANC is unable to pull itself together there, is there any hope for residents of the Free State that things might become better in time?
Well, to start with, I agree with Mr. Moreau and his analysis. I just would like to add another perspective, and that is that the problem in the Free State is by no means a unique problem. It is a similar problem we have here in Northwest. There's also an interim provincial committee because they could not elect at more than one occasion a leadership a provincial executive committee for the ANC. And at the moment, that is also the scenario in the Western Cape as well as Mpumalanga. So the problem we are talking about is not a Free State problem, it is in fact a national problem. And in a way, the ANC on a national level should take responsibility for this problem. And another general perspective, 90% of all local structures throughout South Africa are dysfunctional, and the Free State is in norm with this bigger pattern. But coming to the Free State in particular, it is quite accurate to argue that there are huge divisions within the ANC in the province. We have seen all the court cases in the build-up to the provincial executive committee, know about all the corruption cases, of which the dairy farm one, the asbestos one, there's one with the National Hospital, there's one with the housing projects. It's running into billions of rands, and nothing happened over decades. And my big question is, why will it change suddenly? I have seen statistics from the Institute of Race Relations, my old student Frans Cronje and his team, indicating that the figure of 80–90% of individuals within the NEC directly or indirectly connected to corruption is also a reality. So the question to me is, isn't the problem too big to deal with? Talking about the Free State in particular, there we have the situation of a province in decay over decades, ANC divided. And now if you look at the other side, if you look away from the Magashules and you look to, let's say, the more Ramaphosa-orientated people, and you talk about the Thabo Monyones, the Elsevier Rockmans of the world and others, you will find they are also implicated in corruption. Therefore, I agree completely that Kgalema Motlanthe, who was sent to the province, has a very, very difficult task. And my understanding is that he has dealt with these two groupings over the past week, and a lot of inroads in the process. So to start with, this is a national problem. It is playing out in the Free State, and my take on it is that the leadership isn't there to take really responsibility for the situation and to direct it towards in a positive way.
All right.
And then we are building towards an election on 27 October, and the Magashule strategy, the negative one, how can they harm the ANC to the maximum?
When we return, we are going to wrap up this conversation and ask the question, what should the residents there look forward to in the upcoming local government elections? We're in the middle of a conversation about the state of the African National Congress in the Free State province, and importantly, this year we're heading to the local government elections on the 27th of October, and the structure that should have the pulse of communities in the Free State province is that of Sanko. The person who leads that structure of the ANC alliance partner is Gift Pudi. Gift, talk to us about what the residents of the Free State should be looking forward to as they go to the local government elections in that province, if, as we are told by Professor Duvenage, that in fact it's Ike More who says this, that 90% of municipalities in the Free State province have basically collapsed.
No, Colin, let me first agree with Professor when he was making analysis about the challenges facing the ANC. We must not create an impression that these challenges are only in the Free State We've got so many problems in the country. For instance, in Gauteng, we've got life epidemic. We've got the scooters in Eastern Cape, in the Premier's office of Tatema Boyani. And then let's not create an impression that only the Free State is having challenges. And then I want to agree with Professor that we must look at the problems holistically. And I must also agree that challenges, service delivery challenges in the province. And then our people are hopeless because we still have people who are lacking services. There are no services. But in terms of the response of ANC members, the Free State is united behind the ANC. That is why, as Sango as a support structure, we are talking to our structures, we are talking to our people to ensure that they support the ANC coming local elections. We are on the ground, we are doing our work. And then, but we are saying, as Sango Free State, definitely we condemn corruption. And then we said we are going to support only credible candidates going to local elections. And then we are talking to our people, and we agreed that we are going to stick to the guidelines of the ANC that says only credible people emerging from the communities will definitely ensure that they become councillors, not people imposed to our people.
When you say not people imposed, who are you referring to? And who's going to impose those people?
No, I'm saying previously the ANC was imposing leadership to our people. This time as a civic movement, we are going to show that that thing is not going to happen. We are going to ensure you mobilize our communities through the guidelines of the ANC to ensure that only popular candidates within the communities are emerging as councillors.
I'm glad you mentioned that the ANC is a sick movement in the Free State province. And because we keep losing you, I just want to get your thoughts as we wrap up this discussion. In your view, what is going to resolve the leadership crisis that's plaguing the Free State right now?
No, it's unfortunate that the national politics are contaminating provincial politics. But we are going to ensure that in our structures, we ensure that we engage our sister organization, the ANC, and then because the ANC is the leader of our society, talk to them, and we must also ask ourselves difficult questions as to whether should the ANC continue to be the leader of the alliance having these problems. We need to do the introspection as a civic movement, as alliance partners, and then start to debate about these issues. Because
let me quickly interrupt you. In the interest of time, Ndate Pudi, let me quickly interrupt you. When you say national politics are contaminating the provincial politics in the Free State, who exactly is responsible for that?
No, it's a known fact that this step-aside thing is designed and concocted to deal with the SG or the ANC. So that is why, as Free Staters, most majority of the people are saying, no, let us revisit this step-aside, but it doesn't mean that we condone corruption. But we are saying it must not be designed to deal with a certain individual. It must be in a sense that it deals with corruptions, not individuals.
Why should the Secretary General of the ANC, Ace Magashule, not step aside? Is he not facing fraud and corruption charges in court?
Totally, the constitution of ANC is not above the constitution of the country, which says there's a universal principle that says one is innocent until proven guilty. So therefore, people want to create the impression that Comrade Ace Magashule is guilty until proven innocent. That is not going to happen. There's universal principle, and then he must face the might of the law. He must go to court, prove himself, but we must not design guidelines to ensure that he is removed, and then to ensure that we don't realize radical economic transformation. We don't nationalize the Reserve Bank. We don't bring land to our people.
All right. Ike More, would you like to come in there on the element about the Secretary General, Ace Magashule, needing to first resolve matters in court and that he remains innocent until proven guilty? And it would appear that that is what Gift is talking about, that he can only step aside if found guilty by a court of law. Mr. Murray, I think you muted. Try and unmute yourself.
The ANC is a voluntary organization which crafts its own rules and regulations and its own constitution. The matter of the fact here, or the fact of the matter here, is that the ANC conference that elected Comrade Magashule is the same conference that adopted the step-aside resolution. So we cannot then choose and pick, what to do, that it was correct to elect him, but it is not correct, to adhere to the step-aside resolution. I think it is important, for those people who support Comrade Magashule to understand that he needs time to resolve his own issues in the court. He won't be able to run the ANC and, go to the courts. That is too much. That is the first reason. The second reason is that in the meantime, when he's resolving his issues in court, it is important that the ANC should be allowed to breathe, should be allowed to rebuild itself, should be allowed, to think openly over issues without having, constraints such as that, where, artificial fights have got to be brought up just for purposes of, supporting him. People can support him, as his friends and otherwise. But in this context, we are talking about the resolution that was taken in a proper constituted conference that elected even himself, Comrade Magashule.
All right.
So, yeah, thank you.
Ike More, unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave it there because of time, but I do thank you indeed for your time. Professor Duvenage, unfortunately, I can't give you any more time. We completely run out. And Zianda Ngobo here in studio with me. Thanks indeed for your time. And thank you to Mr. Gift Pudi, the national chair, or rather the chairperson of SANCO in the Free State province. That's where we're unfortunately going to have to leave the conversation. Coming up